He is a fellow of IMT and also a guest fellow of New Zealand Institute of Science and Technology. He served as a co-editor-in-chief for our journal, Food Bioscience, and today's topic will be how to write a good scientific paper. Please join me in welcome Professor Jun Rankin.
Ni hao. Glad to have an opportunity to speak with you. We are very proud of the work we've done with food bioscience and the support that we have received for doing that from Jiangnan University. This is, we believe, the first English language peer-reviewed journal for food science that originated in China. So it's again a first for Jiangnan University, which has kind of become my home in China. What I want to do today is share with you, and I'm going to start the clock and hold myself responsible to finishing time, the things I've learned as an editor, some of the issues that I feel students and faculty sometimes need to pay more attention to when writing manuscripts. The idea here is to have a manuscript which starts with good science, but then to also have a good manuscript. Quality science deserves a quality paper. And I think that has been an important goal of mine as co-editor. The other co-editor is the president of your university, Dr. Chen, and he takes care of much more of the administrative and financial aspects. So the first thing when you have thinking about writing a paper is, do you have a story to tell? A story that hasn't been told. In other words, it needs to be both new, something that has not been reported in the literature, and it has to hold together. It's not one experiment, it's not 3 or 4 scattered experiments. It needs to be a story. There are times in science where we collect data, and there are places to deposit data. And that's an important function of science, but it is not necessarily peer-reviewed research. And so one has to recognize whether one is actually doing peer-reviewable science. However, even though we are telling a story, we tell it in a very distinct, different, and not natural way. Science writing has a format for telling the story that is not the way one would tell a story if you were telling a story to a child. When we tell a story to a child, we start with once upon a time, and we end with they lived happily ever after. And we tell the story in between. Science is structured. So some of the points, again, this is normally an hour. I've dropped a lot of material out, but again, if you're interested, I'm happy to share more information. The second choice is selecting the right journal. And I feel there's an overemphasis on the impact factor. If you look at your paper and you look at your references, what are the references that are really important to your work? What journals are they being published in? Those are journals that clearly are publishing and being read for the kind of work you're doing, because you read those journals, you read those articles. And I would argue again, once you're in that category, I accept the fact that you're going to be the one with the highest impact factor. But again, it should be at least a journal that makes sense. And every paper should not be going to Science and Nature. Those have to be really, really special. So we need to focus on what are the journals that legitimately take work that you're doing. Because your goal is you your goal is to write a paper and get it accepted because that's what you need to graduate. But your real long-term goal is that other people read it, use what you learned, and cite your paper. So as an individual professional, you want to be cited, but in fact, you're doing research because you're trying to help the world of food science and help make a better food supply. And you have to sometimes step back and look at that big picture. And you're writing a paper for the reader. Just as I'm telling, as I started with my story to a child. If I'm doing a once upon a time to a child, I don't give things that even adults won't understand. Your reader is probably, as a good starting point, you. But think of you reading this paper in Argentina or South Africa, about as far away from China as you can get. Will a student understand what you did and what material you worked with? And so that's been kind of my criteria, my standard for what we need to be able to say. Going through this awkward formula of how we do things, we start with a title page. A title page has a title, but it also generally has a running title, which is 80 characters. That's what you put at the bottom of the pages in the journal. It has the authors, it has the author's affiliation, and it has a corresponding author. And a corresponding author historically was the person that the editor wrote to. It is very clear that that is not the case anymore, and in China in particular, the corresponding author is usually the head person in the laboratory, because unless they're the corresponding author, your government doesn't recognize the work. So that's all that's on the title page. The abstract is the next piece, and the abstract is a specified length. It generally is written after the paper. You're trying to convey information. Abstracts get circulated, particularly in the industry, and we're food science, we're an applied science. They may be circulated to the industry without the paper. And so you want a complete story. You want the highlights of your results. You don't want to promise that more information is in the paper. People may not have access to the paper. Abstracts need to be complete, and they need to have real information. You can repeat numbers in there. Keywords are search terms. Antioxidants, food, are not good search terms. They will bring up thousands and thousands and thousands of papers, and so they're not a good term. You want to think in terms of search terms, preferably words not in the title necessarily, that will help people find your paper. Your goal is for people to find your paper, to read it and cite you, or to read it and use it. And I argue in food science that in fact some of your best papers will never be cited, but will be used. The industry doesn't cite. The industry doesn't publish. But if you have a really good paper, you could change the course of the food industry, and you won't get credit. And that's the way it is. But those are the papers that may have an impact on our food supply, which is what we're really all about. The introduction is limited. When you write a thesis, you write a very complete literature review. When you write an introduction, you're only writing what is relevant to your paper and focus much more narrowly into what somebody needs to know to follow the paper. So that is, why are you doing this? What material are you doing? Why are you using that material? And what other people have done surrounding you with either similar materials or similar experiments, so that the reader can see what you've done that is different. And then you end the last paragraph with your objectives. What are you going to do? And you don't give the results at that point. You're just saying, this is what we're planning to do. And the material you are working on is important, and we'll come back to that. If you wrote the paper correctly, most more senior people looking at the paper, when they get to the objectives, it's boring because they know it, because you've signaled that by what you've written. And the objectives should be obvious from the introduction. If you've got something in the objectives that has no introduction elsewhere in the introduction, your introduction is incomplete. If you've got stuff in the introduction that has nothing to do with what you're going to do, you've put in too much. I am at heart an analytical chemist. And so to me, the method section is often more important than the results. If the methods aren't properly described and aren't the appropriate methods, the value of the results is minimal. And I think there's a tendency, and some journals have unfortunately been part of the problem, of de-emphasizing the methods. But the results are only as good as the methods that you've used and the information you've provided. And so I take it very seriously. And I believe that papers should not require a student to find other papers. There are countries in the world where students are lucky enough to get the paper. And it's not easy because some countries are under-resourced. And if they have to go and also search another 10 or 20 papers to figure out what you did in terms of your methods, it's very, very frustrating. Again, some of us have access to tremendous electronic resources. Not everybody does. So I try to get our authors to write briefly each method, including kits. A lot of people are buying kits from companies, and I'm not convinced that they have any idea what they're doing other than following instructions. You need to understand just because a kit is sold doesn't mean it's making the measurements that you need to be making. And your starting material is extremely critical. You are somebody in Argentina. Can they put together and get the same starting material? Can they write to a company in China and get the same material that you worked with? Do you know anything about the material other than you bought it? Is it old? Is it new? Was it harvested yesterday? Was it harvested at the other end of the country? And remember, your sample is very small. I work with fish. One of the fish we work with is called tilapia. It's grown widely here in China. But it's grown all over the world, and it's raised on a farm mostly. So it's being fed differently, it's in different water temperatures, it's in different climates. So that fish that you have is not every tilapia in the world. It's one very narrowly focused tilapia, often from one farm. So it's not even representative of Jiangsu province. It represents one farmer doing one strain of that fish. So remember that the starting material is the crux of the value of your paper. And how did you process that? How did you get it to the lab? And did you make a composite sample so all your data is really coming from one sample? Or did you take 5 fish and start and process each of the 5 fish separately so you in fact have 5 real replicates, at least in terms of that one farm? So again, you need to write some of that early stuff up fairly specifically. The exception, of course, is the very globally standardized tests, but there you should at least indicate the method number, and ideally even a sentence saying we use the Kelvil method, AOEC method number so and so, or we did a sock sweat extraction using AOEC method. So at least even the reader who may not be familiar with the standardized test at least has a broad sense of what you've done. Equipment and chemicals are not the same everywhere in the world. Deionized water can come in a bottle, it can come in a millicube equipment, it can go through a deionizing column. We don't often think about our water supply. but that needs to be at least indicated. Time and temperature. Everybody talks about room temperature. Well, I have been in Jiangnan University in your laboratories in the wintertime when it's pretty cold and you're all wearing coats. And right now in the summertime, your laboratories are a lot warmer than they were in the wintertime. You need to have some sense of when you keep things at room temperature, what that temperature is, and share it with the reader. Most of the time it doesn't make a difference. Sometimes it did. If you store material in the freezer, it stays in the freezer. Freezers fluctuate. It changes. Keeping it 3 weeks is different than keeping it 6 months. So we need some of that information. You get some of your information from the vendor. You have a right to say, this is the composition, this is the cutoff of the dialysis tubing according to the manufacturer. If it's not your data, you need to give credit to whose data it is, which also protects you. Because you're saying, this is what the manufacturer said, you are not guaranteeing that it's correct. If you say protein, you bought a soy protein isolate, and it's 92% protein, and you didn't say according to the manufacturer, and somebody takes that product and says, I got the same product and it's 85%, you look foolish. But if you say it was the vendor's data, at least you protected yourself. And software also counts. What is the software? Is it the software with the equipment? Is it the software that is a separate software package and it needs to be properly identified? Results in discussion, you report your data once. Again, there are exceptions, but if it's in a table, you don't repeat all the numbers in the table. It's in the table, you discuss what the table shows. And you only discuss results that are significant almost all the time. If it's non-significant, there's a quote, a trend, it's not a trend, unless it's statistically significant. And there's an area that, again, because of time, I'm not going to be able to do full justice to it, but there's an area of significant figure. Just because the computer gives you a string of numbers doesn't mean those numbers are valid. And given the limitations of biological material and the variability within one fish, within one field of soybeans that you've harvested or one set of pineapples, basically you're entitled to 3 significant figures. And the example shows you examples of 3 significant figures that we see in the line there. I'm not getting that to work. And I point out that if you put zeros are ambiguous sometimes, but if the 0 is not needed to hold a place, then it is significant. So in the last line, the 3750 is 4 significant figures. For biological materials, it's too much. And remember, all that these numbers you have, all your data, is about precision. It is not about accuracy. And that's the key to understanding your method, is to know what the method is measuring and how it relates to what you want to measure. And they don't always measure the same thing. And the worst example I had, 2 examples, is one case where a student came to me and said, I have 108% protein in this vial. Analytically, he'd done the test correctly, but he had no sense of interpreting the data. Clearly, there was a problem. You cannot have 108% of a solid in a container. Another case is circular dichrose, and most of you have no idea what it is, but I work with a protein that has absolutely no alpha helix. If you do a CD measurement, the computer will tell you you have 15% alpha helix. It will fit the data to the algorithm it has, and it will give you nonsense. So again, you need to pay attention to your methods. References. We're actually fairly liberal. We allow a few different formats within a general framework, but absolute consistency. This last week, one of the students raised a hand and said, well, we use EndNotes and it doesn't take care of it. EndNotes does not take care of it. it can adjust some of the data based on the input, but if the input is put in the wrong field or put in some cases in the wrong way, it will continue to adjust to the format, but will still have capitalization inconsistencies or italics inconsistencies. You need to proofread your entire manuscript, including the references. And that's one of the reasons for selecting a journal that might take your paper, because every time you change journals, you have to change the references in the text and in the reference list, generally speaking. And again, the hardest part is not journals, it's the non-journals, all those other things. And again, you need to look for at least appearance of consistency. Are you capitalizing titles of books? If you're giving the publisher and you're giving the location, which you need to do you do publisher first and location, or do you location and publisher? Some papers shouldn't be one and some the other. That's what we mean by consistency. And we mean that in the text also. I have seen one sentence more than once where they're talking about milliliters of material, and they go milliliters M big L, and 3 words later, it's M little l. If you're going to use a big L or a little l for liters, I personally don't care, and I don't make the journal care. But I want to see in one sentence the same thing. I actually want to see the whole manuscript. If liters is capital, it's capital. If it's little, it's little. Tables, are they needed? Is there enough information to understand on their own? Many people, again, with language problems, spend most of the time with the tables and figures. So you want to provide information. On the other hand, if you've done something called proximate composition, protein, fat, ash, content for the one material, that's not a table. That's numbers that can go right in the text. Tables should have some degree of information, not just one number per thing. And you need to show the standard deviation in most cases, and you should, in most cases, show statistical analysis. And the figure legends, one of the odd things of journals, in order that you notice is not natural, figure legends go separate from the figures. That has to do with production when it goes into publication. And again, with micrographs, have you selected an unusual micrograph, or is it a very representative? Sometimes the unusual one is important, but you need to say, we found this very rarely, but we think it might be important, or we think it's important because. But you need to, again, be intellectually honest about what you're doing. And is this figure necessary? And again, figures are not an excuse for not doing statistics. Anything that can be in a figure could be in a table and could be analyzed statistically, and probably should be updated when you're showing data. Obviously, micrographs and pictures like that don't get statistics, but numbered graphs should still be analyzed statistically, even if it's not shown in text. Other important considerations: English counts. People have to be able to read it. It needs to be in reasonable English. And again, if your English is not strong, seek help. And again, I encourage students to work with other students, because each of you who are limited in English have different limitations. So if 2 or 3 of you, I work on your paper, you work on my paper, you'll each catch things that as the author you might not catch. Abbreviations need to be used consistently. And once you define it, you can use it throughout the paper. Proofread your paper and turn on the spell checker and the grammar checker. We get, routinely, where 2 words, there's no space between the 2 words. Any spell checker would have caught that. And yet you're submitting a paper, it shows a certain sloppiness. And I already talked about, again, if you're quoting, don't try to fool iAuthenticate. It picks it up. The plagiarism test. Put it in quotes and tell you who you're quoting. You're copying somebody's method and their wording. It's okay if you indicate it. Attributes, very important. Again, the key here is to be ethical, to avoid issues like plagiarism, data manipulation, and other aspects, particularly as young people. And I've seen enough of these cases written up in the United States where a career is ruined because a student and or their faculty have done something unethical. It leaves you with a stigma for the rest of your life in the scientific community. So don't try to take shortcuts. It's your paper, it's your future. Helping the journal, the computer nowadays has continuous line numbering. Use it. Know that most journals do have a preference between milliliters and milliliters. Read the instructions to authors. We had a big discussion this morning. We all met as a discussion group from the journal, and it's clear that a lot of the authors are not following the instructions to the author. That makes a reviewer and an associate editor not very happy with you. Use simple words that can be used over and over again. This is not literature. You're not writing Confucian or Shakespearean literature. You're writing science. You want to be clear and understandable. It doesn't have to be flowing and you showing off your vocabulary. And science, most of us are doing a little bit of improving the area of science. And one set of work on one set of fish in Jiangsu province does not answer larger questions. So we need to be modest about our work. And that's what I wanted to share with you. Again, I'm happy to make the slides available. There's a more elaborate set available. There's a guidance document that I use with authors. All of those are available if you want to and need some help. Thank you for listening.
Professor Erickson, next, yeah. Because of time, we will take one question. Any question?
I realize this is a big audience and it's frightening. Frightening. Frightening to not ask a question, but
2,000，我不知道。